Now, moving forward, I would like us to look at the differences between a nuclear reaction and a chemical reaction. I'm going to draw a table like that and show the differences between both of them. One, the main and the key difference between a nuclear reaction and a chemical reaction is that nuclear reaction takes place in the nucleus of an atom and involves protons and neutrons. Takes place in the nucleus and involves protons and neutrons. As you expect, is that in a chemical reaction they take place at the outermost energy level and involves valence electrons. Takes place the outer energy levels and involves valence electrons. In other words, does not involve protons and neutrons. The second difference between a nuclear reaction and a chemical reaction is that a nuclear reaction releases large amount of energy. Nuclear reaction releases large amount of energy. And heat. Whereas in a chemical reaction, the amount of energy released is much less. The amount of energy released is much less. That's another difference between a nuclear and a chemical reaction. And the last difference that I'm going to note in this particular topic about a nuclear reaction and a chemical reaction is that a nuclear reaction is not affected by environmental factors such as temperature and pressure. Not affected by environmental factors such as temperature and pressure, such as temperature and pressure. Whereas a chemical reaction is affected. They are affected by environmental factors such as temperature and pressure. So you'd find that there is a chemical reaction that will take place only at some specific temperatures and at some specific pressure. But in a nuclear reaction, such would not occur. It is not affected by any of those environmental factors. So those are the main differences between a nuclear reaction and a chemical reaction. And learner, you should be able to distinguish between the two of them. And if you're asked, if it is an exam situation, you should be able to produce these three differences. Now, let us do a summary. Let's do a summary of what we have covered so far. Just to remind you, remember, one of our objectives was to define some terms. So let us look at the terms that you've come across and how we have defined them. So a summary of what we've covered so far. One, we have defined the term nuclide. And we've said that nuclide is a particular nucleus. It's a particular nucleus characterized by its protons and neutrons. That's the one word we've come across, learner, and you have been able to define. And also we've given examples. Number two, we have defined the term isotopes. Remember, this is just a reminder because this is something that you must have done in Form 2. Isotopes, you've said, are atoms of the same element with different mass numbers. Atoms of the same element with different mass numbers. We have also come across a term, radioactivity. And Lana, if you remember, we have defined radioactivity as a process by which unstable nuclide breaks up and yields a new nuclide with different composition, with emission of radiation and energy. So you say this is a process by which unstable nuclides breaks up and yields a new nuclide with different composition with emission of radiation and energy. Another term we have come across, it is those substances which undergo radioactivity, and you've said they are called radioactive. You have said they are called radioactive substances. So these are substances which undergo radioactivity. We have also looked at those isotopes which are radioactive, or rather those isotopes which undergo radioactivity, and you've said they are called radioisotopes. Isotopes which undergo radioactivity. And learn another term that we have defined in this particular session is the term radioactive decay. Radioactive decay. And if you can remember, you said that radioactive decay is the spontaneous disintegration of a radioactive nuclide. Spontaneous disintegration of a radioactive nuclide. So we have come across all these terms and we have been able to define them. Therefore, Lana, it is important that you are able to define these terms and understand them and be able to define them as we proceed with other parts or with other concepts of this particular topic.